In our last video, we discussed the importance of setting learning objectives that are specific but not restrictive. Now, the second key to setting objectives is to communicate these objectives to students and parents. This needs to be done explicitly, not just something that's only found in your plan book and in the school's official learning objectives. Now, why do you need to do this? Isn't it enough that you know what your objectives are and that you make sure you reach them? Well, think back to our map illustration from the last video. If your family is going on a road trip, for example, the Grand Canyon, is the driver the only one who knows where you're going? Now, once I did take my wife on a vacation and didn't tell her where we were going until we were almost there because I wanted it to be a surprise. But that's generally not what you do. Your whole family looks forward to seeing the Grand Canyon, and that anticipation helps them when there's the boring drive across the Midwest. And they might look at the map to find other sights to see on the way. When everyone knows where you're going, it helps motivate them more. It's the same way with your class. If the students know what the end result is, it can help them with some of the lessons along the way. And sometimes those individual lessons might not be the most interesting things for the students. But when the students have some degree of understanding about why they're doing what they're doing, it can help them slog through the tedium. I'm not going to tell you that this will magically keep students excited and interested every lesson, but it can at least increase their engagement. Now, sports coaches know this. They point to the upcoming game against the crosstown rival as the goal or the objective. Then they have the players go through endless drills, free throw practice, passing drills, and all the rest. The players are more likely to devote themselves to those drills, which are pretty tedious in themselves, when they keep their objective in mind, beating their rivals. And that objective helps the coach stay focused as well. If the rival has a couple of 7-footers who always play down low around the basket on defense, the coach is probably not going to spend much time with his team on driving the lane right down the middle. Instead, he's going to work more on outside shooting and ball movement on the perimeter. Similarly, for you as the teacher, when you keep your learning objectives in mind, when they're front and center, you can stay focused on those and avoid going off on rabbit trails. Face it, as teachers, there are always topics or issues that are of particular interest to us, and we're tempted to spend time on them, more time than they warrant. Instead, if we keep those learning objectives front and center and are reminding our students of them, it will help us stay on the topic better. So how do you communicate your learning objectives to students and parents? Of course, especially in high school, you can list them on a course syllabus, but that generally gets put aside after the first day of school if it's ever looked at. You need to keep them before the students more than that. Here are some possibilities. Post them in the classroom in some way. You might have a bulletin board that's changed each unit, something like what we're learning in science. Or when you begin a lesson, just write the objective on the board. You can also put the learning objectives at the top of assignments, so when you hand out a worksheet, just have the objective, what the purpose of the worksheet is, the objective. Simply remind the students verbally. That can be effective. Let's look in your history books at page 127. And what are we learning about this unit? You can also send the learning objectives home to the parents. If you have a weekly newsletter, you can have a sidebar where you list the learning objectives for the week, and then encourage parents to ask their children about them. We all know what kids say when parents ask, "What did you learn in school today?" "Nothing." But if parents can say, "What did you learn about the different states of matter?" the kids will generally give better answers. When you communicate your learning objectives to students and parents, use plain language, not the educator speak in which most objectives are written. For example, if you're studying geography, your formal objective might be knows the purposes and distinguishing characteristics of different map projections, including distortion on flat map projections. That expresses precisely what you want the students to learn, but it uses language that most parents won't understand, and your middle school students, the ones this was written for, certainly won't know what you're talking about. But say something like this. Learn about different ways a globe can be shown on a flat map. Also learn how those can change the shapes and sizes of countries on the map. Is this as precise or complete as the technical one? No, but it communicates the main ideas in a way that students and parents can understand. Next, you should connect the learning objectives to previous and future learning. Again, think about the map analogy. On a road trip, it's helpful to see where you have been already and where you are going. So it is with learning. Research into how our brain learns new material in particular helps us here. We learn best when we can mentally connect new content with things we already know. You know this is true. You read something and you start making mental connections or analogies with things you've learned before to help you remember it. So it helps our students when you show them explicitly how the new learning is built on what they already know. And motivation is increased when students can see that what they're learning today will help them with something in the future. For example, you might tell students this. Class, you already know how to add two-digit numbers, and you've gotten really good at that. Now, we're going to learn how to add three-digit numbers, and you'll be doing the same thing you did with two-digit numbers. Then after we learn that, you'll be ready to subtract three-digit numbers. Finally, it's helpful at times to show the students how to set personal learning objectives. This might take place at the beginning of a unit of study. Let's think back to our geography example about different map projections. You might have the students do a KWL exercise. What's a KWL exercise? K. What do I already know? When you start the unit on map projections, have the students list, either individually or as a group, things they know or think they know about map projections. They might say, some maps have straight lines and others are curved. Or, some maps make Greenland look really big, bigger than South America. W. What do I want to learn? Students here list things they don't know about and that they would like to find out about. It might be things like this. Why are there different maps like that? How can you tell how big the countries really are if they look so different on different maps? Why might I use a map that makes some countries look so huge if it's not really true? You might lead the class in this together and then have the students think of things they might want to find out individually. Granted, you're going to have some students who are eager to learn and others who say, I don't want to learn nothing. You might require them to think of at least two things just to get them started. L. You do this after the unit is finished and have them answer the question, what did I learn? They look back at the things they listed in the W section and see if they have found answers. They can also see what they learned that they didn't even know they wanted to learn when they started out. As you go through this process, regularly point out the connection between the students' learning goals and the overall class objectives. While some things the students come up with in the W step might be a bit off topic, you should be able to see some connection with what you want the class to learn. In our next session, we're going to discuss how you can provide feedback to the students, and particularly how you connect your feedback to the learning objectives.